The next presentation is transforming the National Theatre's digital archive into an accessible, intuitive, and engaging experience. Nathan Both from Preservica and Dan Heather from the National Theatre of Great Britain. Please come.
It's in presenter mode.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I'm going to let you do it. I don't work in technology.
No worries. Let's try this. We're presenting in a PDF because my parent organisation insists on using a custom typeface that won't display otherwise. So I'm just going to try and get us to present a view. What's this opened it in? Yeah, it's in a browser, isn't it, as opposed to in... let me see if I can open it through something else. Oh gosh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's here in the folder.
Yeah, let's see what we can open it in.
That's great. So that certainly answers the question of how many assistants do you need for a technologist to actually start a presentation. So my name is Nathan Voogt. I'm VP of Sales at Preservica. Dan and I are going to do a bit of a double act for this presentation. So my role is more just to give a bit of background to the technology that underpins this project and give a bit of an extended intro to Dan as well here. So I've only got a couple of slides just to go through, and I'll probably just start off with a bit of clarification, because not everyone in the room will have heard of Preservica before. So we specialize in what's called active and automated digital preservation. So the term digital preservation is used in a number of different ways within the industry. From our point of view, what we're wholly obsessed by and focused on is the file formats more than anything else that underpins an archive. So what we're doing is monitoring all the different file formats. So we're talking any unstructured data here, making sure that we have migration pathways and making sure that we can constantly migrate these assets over the long term to ensure that whenever you come to search for them, access them, they are readily available and instantly accessible. So one of the key challenges which we're looking to support our archives, our clients with, is around the volume of data within their archives. Also making sure that the constant monitoring that happens in the background is preventing any bit rot, losing the ones and zeros of your digital files, and making sure that we're instantly replacing those and fixing them as soon as they become visible. So as I said, the range of content we deal with is pretty much any unstructured data at all. It goes all the way from your standard business documents, your Words, your PDFs, all legacy formats such as WordPerfect that everyone in the room has struggled to open on a modern day laptop, all the way through to video, hence why we're here, and audio visual, but even into the more complex world, which includes multi-part assets. So if you were to look at website preservation, for instance, it's a combination of different file formats all stitched together to give you what you can read with the human eye. And how you have to preserve an asset like that is a whole different beast altogether. And then it takes us all the way around to 3D design, GIS data as well. So 2,500 different file formats, but which is a bit of a strange flex, but at the end of it, really it's very simple. We're just providing search, access, and the ability to action your content. So very pleased to be here in front of a new audience today for the first time, talking and really understanding how your unique challenges apply in the intelligent archiving world as well. So just very briefly, looking towards the future, because no tech presentation is complete without some sort of mention towards AI, we're taking a very pragmatic view. So Preservica, we are wholly focused on the protection of content. Nothing that we do from an AI point of view is changing content itself. What we are much more focused on is the enrichment and the enhancement, largely around metadata. So if we're looking to audio transcription, if we're looking at image analysis and identification, it's again just supporting those initial aspects of search access and being able to action content. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Dan, who's going to take us through the project that we worked on collaboratively with the National Theatre over the past few years. And any questions, I'll be around afterwards as well to answer those as well. Okay, thank you very much.
If you have any difficult questions at the end, direct them towards Nathan rather than me. So hi, my name's Dan Heather. I'm the Digital Archives Manager at the National Theatre, UK. So we're a Preservica enterprise solution user and have been since around 2020. So I'm going to take the next 20 minutes or so, hopefully, to discuss how the adoption of Preservica's new generation interface, which is their current interface, has allowed us to realize some long-held ambitions around providing better user experience in our research room, particularly looking at the benefits of their kind of bulk upload mechanisms for digital objects, which allow you to put kind of descriptive metadata for digital objects alongside those digital objects. We're going to look at how the kind of intuitive look and feel has allowed us to really broaden engagement with Preservica and with digital preservation more broadly, to bring in kind of members of the archive team who aren't so closely focused ordinarily on digital collections, and also a kind of wider constellation of kind of collaborators that we work with. So we'll begin very briefly by describing or profiling the National Theatre Archive, because you might be asking quite legitimately, why is somebody from a theatre archive talking to this event? So the National Theatre Archive collects records relating to the cultural and institutional life of its parent or institution, the National Theatre. We were founded in 1963, and we've been in our current home on London's South Bank since 1976, which is next to the BFI, who spoke this morning. We boast 3 stages. We have really kind of unrivaled cultural reach for a UK theatre. Although we're based in London, we create world-class work that can be seen by audiences across the world. So in the last 10 years, we've toured to over 14 different countries with international hits like Warhorse. In the UK, our recent production in 2023, Ocean at the End of the Lane, was seen by over 230,000 people. And we also tour our productions directly into schools in the UK, allowing us to hit over 10,000 young people every year who are otherwise often excluded from theatre and performing arts. So really central to our mission, and the reason that I'm speaking today, is digital delivery. So this is really aligned with our commercial activity and our mission-led activity. So there's a small chunk here from our mission statement, which explicitly acknowledges the need for a digital offer. So we deliver that by our NT Live activity, which is broadcast via global cinema, in people's homes via something called NT at Home, which is a streaming platform. I often say it's a bit like Netflix for theatre. We don't have the reach of Netflix, sadly. I think we'd probably like to have their profits as well. And we also have something called the NT Collection, which is a curated selection of plays linked to the current curriculum that we make freely available to schools both in the UK and the United States. So the reach with digital is really notable. So we work directly with over 800 UK cinemas who show our work, and over 11 million people worldwide have experienced the National Theatre via cinema. So whilst kind of digital is a relatively new part of our offer, alongside that more traditional live theatre experience, it's already a really important vehicle for widening audiences and for increasing our global reach. So we use Preservica in conjunction with a long-standing collections management system that's currently Axial's Calm product to manage the huge quantities of material that we generate. We're in the process at the moment of migrating from our Calm product towards a new collections management system called Apexio, and that boasts Preservica integration out of the box, which is really important for us because digital preservation is now a key element of what we do with all of the collections we manage. So the archive itself ranges from enormous or relatively enormous for a GLAM institution, 4K recordings, which are intended for cinema screenings, through to more traditional items you might expect in a kind of pre-digital archive, so posters and programs in PDF, Word documents, photographs, both analog and digital, capturing all the activities that contribute to the artistic life of our organization. These have all been kind of migrated from older analog storage formats or storage solutions, many of which have been alluded to today, into being digital. And we have around 200 terabytes of digital content within our Preservica instance, which again is quite large for a GLAM institution in the UK, but I know compared to many of you guys probably feels like small change. So I will not boast about our 200 terabytes today because I feel like I might be laughed out of the room. Generally, I can wow people when they work in other GLAM institutions, but I know I'm onto a loser with that today. So on taking up my role at the National Theatre around 3 years ago, it became apparent that one of the largest single challenges surrounds our collection of production and rehearsal photographs. So we've got in excess of 120,000 digitized and born digital photographs in JPEG and TIFF, covering all of our productions from 1963's Hamlet, which was our opening show, through to the ones that are currently on stage. These photographs were stored on legacy network drives, on-premise servers, CDRs, thumb drives, every other short-lived esoteric format that you can think of, but had now been moved all into kind of on-premise NT servers. We hadn't, however, begun ingesting it into Preservica, largely owing to a number of historical quirks in how this content was managed. So this kind of unpacks some of the specific challenges. So sitting on a huge volume of contextual information, which could be used to populate item-level descriptive and technical metadata fields, so at the level of the discrete digital object, but it was all stored in spreadsheets rather than in our dedicated collections management platform. Another significant hurdle was the fact that the metadata schema used for the production and rehearsal photographs was bespoke to the images itself, having been developed in-house. I use bespoke here as a polite term. There are other words that I would use to describe that metadata schema if I wasn't standing on the stage. They didn't conform to ISAG, which is a schema that we typically use quite a lot for managing heritage items in a UK context. I know that colleagues will use very different metadata schemas, but nor did it conform to other kind of widely known or published schemas like Dublin Core. So whilst the metadata contained in the spreadsheets was really useful to us, we were mindful that it would present interpretive difficulties for users, and it wouldn't sit comfortably in any off-the-shelf solution. Another factor was that led to kind of stasis was the fact that CalmView, which is the front end of Calm, our current collections management platform, had a really limited functionality around rendering digital images alongside metadata when browsing. So I think the recognition that it would have been a poor user experience at the end probably made people apprehensive about putting all of the legwork into this. And finally, and this is the one I really can't emphasize enough, is that the task was enormous and daunting. Everybody in this room will be aware that there is always more content to capture, to curate, to manage, and to share than we have time to address. I know we've talked about eating elephants and all sorts of things like that today. There's a lot of elephants to be eaten. At the time that we began looking at this, Preservica's then graphical user interface, which was called Classic and is now deprecated, was deemed to be a bit intimidating or overly technical. And this is added to an anxiety amongst my broader colleagues about accidentally breaking something or not getting it. And that led to a collective desire to kind of kick the can down the road. But we are really acutely aware of the value of these images to our research communities, from external researchers, working in kind of non-commercial, not-for-profit contexts, through to media agencies and publishers interested in using our images or footage in a new commercial venture. So the digital collections, both static and durational content, are really vital to our mission-related and commercial goals. So getting to a position where these images and their associated technical and descriptive metadata were searchable, renderable, and explicable to users. On-site initially at our National Theatre Studio research room, but longer term on the open web, once we've navigated through all the complex rights issues, was a real priority. So Preservica's new generation kind of tool has been really useful to us for facing this issue head on. So it's got a simple interface, uses out-of-the-box CSV imports. We've talked about CSV quite a lot today. So we use CSV imports alongside digital assets. And that was the impetus for a larger project to review the spreadsheets, crosswalk the bespoke metadata into more explicable Dublin Core fields, and start ingesting. At this point, I note with sadness that Dublin Core is a reference to Dublin, Ohio, not Dublin, Ireland. I was crestfallen when I found this out because I thought it would have made for some sort of elaborate pun that I could work into the presentation. It didn't happen. The functionality in new generation wasn't the sole driver. The refreshed look and feel was also quite compelling. Although the digital archive team that I head up in the archive has a headcount of only 3, the archive itself has 8 kind of core staff members, alongside a very highly capable cohort of volunteers and academic placements. We found that colleagues found the new generation interface significantly less daunting than classic, which was the old one. And there was a demonstrable increase in appetite from my colleagues to use the platform. Given the increasingly kind of digital-first nature of the National Theatre Archive, we found that this project was a great way to onboard colleagues into the Preservica environment and into the kind of broader topic of digital preservation, where perhaps there'd been apprehensions or anxieties historically. It felt like a nice, gentle kind of on-ramp to thinking about this area of work. It's also been great because it's allowed us to spread the labour out more evenly across the team, which I was very grateful for. When we'd initially acquired Preservica, we'd always saw it as functioning as a kind of digital asset management platform with storage capabilities, but performing the role really of a child solution with our collections management platform, so CALM that I've alluded to, being the parent. And at that point, we didn't really think that Preservica would ever host a comprehensive set of descriptive or technical metadata. However, kind of dawning realization that Preservica would outlast our collections management system, if I'm frank, and growing confidence in the product's look and feel has occasioned a reappraisal of their respective roles, and the decision to prioritize pushing metadata into Preservica first, with that subsequent crosswalking activity I've spoken about, back into our collections management system later. Everybody enjoys looking at screenshots from spreadsheets and CSV, so that's why they're here. The workflows have been relatively resource-light to create, largely focusing on decision-making around how non-standard metadata is rationalized to the Dublin Core schema and what QA steps need to be in place prior to undertaking those ingests. So we've scaled up from an initial pilot led by me and one very enthusiastic volunteer who's subsequently decided to go into digital preservation, so can't have been all bad, to a functioning workflow that's performed regularly by kind of 4 or 5 people. So I understand everyone's use cases will drastically different, as will their pre-ingest activities if they're thinking about digital preservation. But happy to share this approach and share more screenshots with you, should you want to chat about it in more detail. This slide kind of starts to think about essentially some of the pragmatic decisions we've made around crosswalking. We thought about Dublin Core just for speed and ease of use as an quite open, well-understood metadata schema, and the plethora of online guides about subsequently translating Dublin Core back into more sector-specific standards. I think this project's given us a lot of food for thought around metadata transformation going forward for all sorts of different media, given that we have a very diverse archive collection. More of these images. So once we'd undertaken the crosswalking activity, we populated CSV templates and used the kind of bulk ingest process. We found it's relatively easy, and it's been a good opportunity to identify anomalies in file titling. We had very prescriptive rules about the use of things like underscores and end dashes, for example. We found that despite the fact these were very prescriptive, they weren't actually adhered to very well. So whilst it slowed the process somewhat, we've taken the kind of view that this is a really valuable QA step, and it's allowed us to really look at our metadata and clean it up a lot, because it's been generated by multiple individuals over a very extended period of time. I'm sure that's true for many of you guys as well. So you will be able to see here examples of a completed kind of CSV templates. And essentially what you have here is the CSV template alongside the associated images prior to them being ingested into the platform. And then you have a very small image of a single asset in the back end of Preservica. So the metadata is pulled through and presented in the prescribed DC fields. And there's additional functionality to manually edit the metadata fields. We found that can be really useful in some circumstances where you just need to do a bit of fine-tuning. Obviously, there's instances where we've discovered more significant or recurring errors. And in that instance, we've obviously kind of pulled the ingest and re-ingested in its entirety when we've done the necessary troubleshooting. So, like all projects, some of our expectations have been challenged, and we've had to redefine our approach. We have lots of plays with titles that explore the limits of conventional punctuation. Is example one here. So we've been mindful of things like illegal characters, and again, the need to develop more robust and consistent rules. Titling's historically been subject to quite a lot of variation. We've also worked with our colleagues at Preservica on error reporting pop-ups. Initially, these were very early adopters. They lacked perhaps some of the level of detail or specificity we always needed. But Preservica have been very attentive in this. Thank you, Nathan, if you are still in the room. We are grateful to you and your colleagues in resolving these. And I think, obviously the benefit of being an early adopter to technology is you do have a seat at the table, so you get to kind of steer things a little more, which can be great, even if it means that sometimes as well you're the first person to encounter the issues and say, oh, this needs a bit of thought. As I've also said, undertaking a project to ingest over 120,000 items with human-generated metadata has prompted a lot of data cleaning and some retrospective deaccessioning work. But I think this has been really beneficial to us to kind of better understand the scope of our collections and begin to think about whether what we have is in our collection is really always fit for purpose or relevant. The next two slides, which are pretty much the final ones, give a bit of an insight into how this material renders on a product called Universal Access, which is one of the front-end products for Preservica. They have a newer product called Platform, but we are not early adopting on absolutely everything. But I'll just give you a quick look. Am I running out of time, or am I good? 3 minutes. Here we go. So, yeah, I think one of the really nice things about being able to push the content out on the front end has been the ability to surface kind of a variety of images from each of our theatre productions. So alongside images of household names, or at least household names in the UK, that are often syndicated or shared on social media platforms or with press, users can now access a much broader variety of images which illustrate our named musicians, our sound designers, our fight choreographers, all of the other creatives who play a really essential role in realizing what takes place across our stages, but don't always get the same level of visibility when it comes to our users. I think in terms of wrapping up, it's worth emphasizing that this project is very much work in progress and there's still a great deal to do. However, it's really fired our collective imaginations at the National Theatre and helped us clarify our thinking about the place of Preservica and digital preservation in the archive more generally. So, yeah, we're kind of thinking about how the benefits of richer, multi-level metadata can be deployed across other parts of the collection. So having started with photographs, we're now thinking about posters and about our kind of durational or audio-visual content, so all of our play recordings. And we're hoping that the work we've done today can be improved so we can begin to pull through a kind of similar level of really rich descriptive and technical metadata for everything that's in our custody. I think it's the triumphant bugle, which is perfect because we're on the final slide. I hope the talk has been interesting. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak at an event like this today because I realize that this is certainly a community that we don't get to speak to very often, and something I said to kind of colleagues over lunch is that coming more from the kind of glam sector, there are absolute affinities and kind of shared experiences, and I've certainly learned a lot today. I hope that we can offer something to you from the world of glam as well, even if it's much smaller collections. But yeah, if anybody would like to kind of chat to me about the work we've done, we'd be more than willing to kind of share our experience to date around digital preservation, around descriptive metadata more generally. If any of this kind of provokes your brains into giving me a tap on the shoulder. But thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you.
We have time for one question. One question. Do you have any question? One question? No? I have one question. When I was watching your presentation, do you have some material with some material that is not yours material? How do you make the control with the, because you have to pay to use that kind of material?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of, we kind of commission theatre, but we work with a lot of freelancers. So it's really kind of quite complex. We own to some degree everything that appears on our stages, but we work with a really broad range of freelancers, obviously from kind of actors and creatives through to set designers, musicians. So the kind of the intellectual property issues can be really challenging and complex. We kind of take advantages of some of the UK legislation around long-term kind of preservation, which allow us to kind of create copies and things like that. But in terms of making it publicly accessible, it is much more challenging. So that kind of remains work in progress. I think leaning into kind of the aspects of our work that are kind of a heritage institution, we make a lot of the material already available for non-commercial and not-for-profit. Mm-hmm. But the kind of the licensing and reuse is much more difficult. Mm-hmm. That is another head scratcher. There is a wholly different, very long talk I could give you about all the challenges of IP, but I'm sure everybody in this room has long presentations they could give about IP as well. But yeah, it remains something that we kind of have to reconcile alongside the digital preservation work. I suppose we just hope that if this stuff is still durable in 600 years, copyright law might have caught up with the digital first world. So you never know, it might be easier to make it accessible then, who knows. I might have retired by then as well, I'm not sure, depends. the ages are getting higher. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.